Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode here on the Resto Saga Classic Car Restoration YouTube channel. And I'm afraid today's episode is one of mixed emotions because, as you may have guessed from the thumbnail, I am announcing the sale of my 1969 MGB GT, as demonstrated here in the collection. This video is going to track my complete ownership of the MGB, which coincidentally has lasted for 3 years, 3 months and 3 days from the day of buying the car to the day of putting it up for sale. Mixed emotions in that it's exciting to be moving on to something new, and I'll talk about that right at the end of the video, but also mixed emotions because I'm sad to see it go. I've invested quite a lot of time in this car. I've done a lot of work, as you'll see from the following footage, and I've also invested quite a bit of money. But I'm glad to be moving on to the car, hopefully onto someone who will look after it. We'll put equally much care into looking after this car, and we'll preserve it for the future. I've really enjoyed owning this car, but let's just have a wee look and a tour around the car and see everything that's been done over the last 3 years, most of which has been documented here in the channel, and then we'll talk about what's happening next on this channel towards the end of the video. And so here we are down at the 1969 MGB GT. Seems a bit of a shame, and I really have thought long and hard about moving this car on, but I'm sure it comes as a bit of a shock to all of you on the channel, as it has served for so many videos and featured heavily with work both in the engine and the rear suspension. The MG appeared here in the channel in March just over 3 years ago when I bought it from a man local to myself. He had carried out a full restoration, had done a lot of bodywork, had welded sills underneath the floors. The underside of this car is utterly perfect, and it has required no welding in my time. I bought the car, and my wife and I enjoyed it, used it for lots of local trips, and really did enjoy it over that summer, and then started that winter to endeavour on some jobs that needed done. So the first job was underneath the bonnet, and that is where I will take you now. So under here rests the 1800cc 4-cylinder B series engine with its twin SU carbs. Whenever I bought the car, it ran well, but it did have a few flat spots in the rev range, and it just didn't feel that it was giving out as much power as it probably should be. Therefore I had a friend who's a mechanic, and he did a compression test on all 4 cylinders, and from memory, and you can probably look back through the old videos, it was cylinder 1 that was really letting this car down. So we decided to strip the head out. So with the engine in situ, it took the head off, and lo and behold, there was a crack in the head. The valve, or not the valve stems, the valve seats were also really badly worn away and quite pitted. So this engine had been with a leaded head and had been run with unleaded fuel. So high miles leaded fuel, the valve seats are too soft and the valve seats get worn away. So now that we'd found out that the head was cracked, we took it to a local specialist who was unable to fix it. Therefore we sourced this brand new Ivor Cyril cylinder head, which is unleaded, converted, and that's been a great job. I got it for a bargain price and would highly recommend MSC Classics parts. That's who I've used for pretty much everything I've bought for this MG. At the same time, I converted it to electronic ignition, having read so many positive reviews about it, and I'm sure you all know that the Morris Minor is not converted just yet. Did a lot of tidying up, painted the alternator, put a new coil in, rebuilt the heater box, which I'm particularly proud of, and actually did a mini series on that, and you can find it on YouTube under the playlists. Got a new oil cooler lines, radiator was flushed out and repainted, new stainless steel cap on there, new fuel lines, and the carbs got a bit of attention too, balanced, and the car just runs so well, and has done really since all that major engine work. The other thing that I'm sure you, if you were following at the time, will have known, there was a little core plug leaking just in there. For some reason, there's a core plug behind that big thick plate of steel, and it was leaking, and the only way to get at it was to take the engine out. So the engine came out, got painted, and got new core plugs all the way around just to avoid that happening again. I'm really glad that they did. Otherwise, under here, The solenoid on the starter gave up promptly afterwards, so we got a new high torque starter motor. So there's been a lot of money spent on this car really since I bought it, and I also put the spin on oil filter conversion because I didn't like the fact that the old filter was upside down and the oil used to drain out of it while the car was sitting. So that was most of what has gone on underneath the engine bay. Really pleased. I think it turned out quite well. And as I'm probably going to say a lot in this video, I'm going to be really sad to see this beautiful old car go. It served me so well, but circumstances have changed, and I'll elaborate a wee bit more on that in the end of the video. So back at the exterior of the car, other things that I did, not particularly massive upgrades, but I put it on the correct black and silver number plates. Well, I say correct, this car being built in 1969, registered in 1970, could have either black or silver, or the sort of the three-dimensional plastic type letters number plates, or Blue Mel's plates. And it came on Blue Mel's plates, but I really wanted the black and silver one, so that's what it got. Also got brand new Calumet windscreen wipers, and a full going over as a detail session as well. So the car was detailed top to bottom, and I did a full detailing video on how to detail your classic car. Took it through all the stages and really brought it up so well because the car had sat outside for a little bit of time before I took ownership. Let's have a wee look underneath at the mechanical work I did towards the rear of the car. So lying down here at the rear of the car, you can see brand new springs, brand new polyurethane bushes, both at the front and rear spring eye bushes, which are just up in there. The grease is still fresh. New nuts and bolts all round, and I obviously did both sides. That has hugely improved the handling of the car. Yes, the car does sit a little bit high up, but those new springs really did a great job. I also got new drop links, and those have been squeaking and rattling for quite some time, so this was a really good idea, and I think really improved the drivability of the car and also my enjoyment. Looking back at the external appearance of the car, other things I did was to have the wheels sandblasted and powder coated in this chrome effect powder coat, which I think looks absolutely stunning. Brought the wheels a new lease of life to the wheels. Also put brand new chrome spinners on the whole way around the car, and that was sort of a combined Christmas present from my parents and my wife, and I think it's really made the car look somewhat special. Now the car does sit a little bit high at the back, and we've talked about this a lot in the past, and we've come to the conclusion, number one, that the springs haven't settled entirely yet, and number two, that those tires are not high enough profile to be in keeping with the original. Therefore the sidewalls are too low, and it just doesn't fill the arch the way it should. But I don't really think it detracts too much away from the look of the car, as I'm sure you will agree. This car is a Mark II, and I'm reliably informed that this little chrome finisher strip along the bonnet edge is actually quite rare that it's present, so that was a good find and not something that I was aware of when I actually bought the car. So I'm sure if you're a regular viewer on this channel, you'll be quite aware that I do enjoy working on my cars, and I do all my work myself, including the bodywork where I can, although this car has required none of that. Interiorly, that's just reminded me, the car came with a hideous brown leather and gold Motolita wheel, so I sourced a original banjo style wheel from a local MG owner, and also replaced the correct gear knob on. There was a wooden one on which did the job, but it just didn't look all that presentable. Inside here, nothing else has really been required other than a new flasher unit for the indicators. And you may also remember, something I'd forgotten, was that the tachometer, or rev counter as we might call it here in the UK, also required to be replaced with a spare one that came with the car, and that was a good find. And it was just a case of plugging it in. The other one just wasn't the right one for this car, and there are complicated reasons for that, but I wasn't able to completely understand them. So really, other than working on the car, this car has done multiple journeys local to myself here in Northern Ireland. My wife and I took it out on trips, we took the dog, we went on short breaks in it, even down to local hotels. And then with the arrival of my son in April of 2018, the car has sadly got less use. It is a two-seater. I know they call it a 2+2, but really in this day and age, the two back seats, despite their seatbelts, are completely useless. You couldn't fit a child in there with any good conscience, and they wouldn't be too comfortable, and there's no way you would fit any decent sized adult in there. So therefore really the car has only been used if we've gone out for dinner and had a babysitter. And although my son likes to go out in it either with myself or my wife driving, it just really isn't receiving the use it deserves, and has covered very few miles really in the last 2 years since my son, Resto Saga Jr., arrived on the scene. And I'm sure this story is quite familiar to other classic car owners who maybe bought a classic part of their young family arriving. And although it really does pain me, and I'm going to probably regret it down the line, to sell this beautiful MGB GT, I think I'm going to have to use my money in another direction, and I'll have a wee chat about that towards the end of this video. I can't have a huge amount of money, well, it is a reasonable amount of cash, tied up in a car that is not getting used or enjoyed. And with any classic car, if they don't get used and enjoyed, they generally deteriorate. Seals dry out, brakes don't work, things start sticking, and generally rubbers deteriorate. It's just not good for an old car not to get used, or really any car. It doesn't have to be an old car. I'm a big fan of keeping my cars moving, keeping them on the road, and keeping them presentable as well. None of my vehicles are concours, not even the Morris Minor, even though it's probably the most presentable of all the cars in the fleet. But I think this car here was the best example of keep it on the road, keep it fixed up, keep it moving. And I will be really sad to move it on. If I had kept this car, what else would I have done? Well, I probably would have put a stainless steel exhaust on it. I think that would have been a good idea. If the car hadn't settled completely on its springs, I maybe would have put some lowering blocks on it just to improve the lines. That wouldn't be an overly big job to do. Mechanically, I think this car is pretty much perfect. The dream had always been to put an overdrive gearbox in it, but that never came to fruition. Those boxes can be quite expensive to find and fit. Well, the fitting I could do myself, but you never really know what you're getting with a gearbox, because it's very difficult to have a car to give up its gearbox that you can test drive it. What else would I have done? Long term, I think I probably would have stripped the car right down. I would have painted its proper tartan red. It's tartan red if you look up underneath the dashboard. And I think that really would have set the car off. Probably got the bumpers really shiny as well, proper chrome, and probably put the overriders back on the front. Interior, I always said I would get the seat foams fixed, but again, that never came to fruition. And I think the car's interior really would have benefited from that. So that's really what the plans would have been. But things change, priorities change, and there will be lots more exciting footage coming on the channel of something else that I will tell you about coming up very soon. And so really the only thing left for me to do here on the channel, and once again I'm really sorry to have to do this, but is to bid bye-bye to the 1969 MGB GT. Faithful friend for the last 3 years, but hopefully it's a stepping stone onto greater and better things, and I hope the next owner, and it's just confirmed sale tonight, will enjoy the car even half as much as I do, and I will be doing my best to follow up on where it goes next. Might even ask for first refusal on sale in the future if I can. Wouldn't mind owning this again. So back to the garage and we'll have a chat about what happens next. And so, as you can see, the time and care that I was talking about at the start of the video has been evident throughout the 1969 MGB's ownership here with myself, and also with its previous owners over the years. And I've had an in-depth history file, and I'm going to add my own bit into that. And I think that's really good for future owners to be able to track the history of the car and even get in touch with those people who have owned it before them, such as I have myself. Now, in considering what comes next, as I said, I have a young family. The 1969 MGB GT does not lend itself to carrying my wife and my child around. So what I would hope to do is add a VW camper. Most likely a VW, but probably a camper. Now, in considering what type of camper, that's quite difficult. You can go all the way back to split screen, which, yes, they're more expensive. There might be quite a lot of welding to do unless you obviously buy a top-end restoration. But if you buy a top-end restoration, are you going to use it as much, say, going to the beach, exposing it to salt air, sand? So maybe then go through into the T2s. Bay window, slightly less expensive. Equally, you get the vintage feel, ease of looking after and working on the cars, like you know I love to do here on the channel. But again, usability over long distances, if I decide to tour, say, around the whole of the island of Ireland or even go across to Scotland, England, Wales, probably not just as ideal. Although, it is a classic car and they are usable. Moving on to the T25s, still very attractive propositions. Engines are slightly more modern, although again, not exactly cutting edge. But they still suffer from corrosion issues because they won't have the same body protection as later models. A T4, quite like those. Going into slightly retro because some of them are about 20 or 30 years old. Usable. Downside is they don't all have 3-point seat belts in the back, but they do have pop-up roofs, some of them, and they suffer less from corrosion, so very much a possibility. Then moving into the T5s and T6s, again the price starts to go up again, but definitely a lot more attractive inside, more reliable, but then you're losing that classic feel again. So it's not going to be an easy decision. It's going to take me a little while to build up some capital, make my decision as to where I'm going to go, and I'm very welcome for your input as well. If you'd like to follow where this story goes, please hit the subscribe button down below, give this video a like, I'd really appreciate it, and even turn the little bell icon on as well. And if you really like what you've seen on this channel, please visit my Patreon page and consider becoming a contributor, and that would support my page and help me to grow it. We still have the Land Rover, we still have the Morris Minor, they're going nowhere, and I'm still building the Toylander for my little son. So lots of projects ongoing. The channel is changing, but not changing for the worse, I hope you'll agree. And I'll catch you again next week. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.